All right, Blake, it's time for the full court trap to weigh in on the raging debate online that's really been the heat of college basketball discussions. Do you know what I'm referring to, Mr. Blake Smith?
Yeah, I do. Johni versus Cooper Flagg. It's been a super burning hot discussion throughout the college basketball world and heck, even like NBA draft talk.
Yep, it's been at the forefront recently, especially as we wind down towards the end of the regular season into March Madness. They've really all season long been the two top contenders, but they've obviously ran away with this race into the latter months of the regular season. So, Blake, we'll start off with the basics here, just looking at the stats. There's obviously a lot more to this overall debate than just the stats, but for Broome, he's averaging 18.6 a game. 11.1 rebounds a game, which is fourth in the country on 3.4 assists per game, 50% shooting from the field, and almost 3 blocks a game, 2.6 blocks per game, averaging around 1.3 turnovers a game. He's got a higher adjusted team offensive and defensive efficiency, and he's also playing in the toughest conference in college basketball. So, Blake, when you look at those numbers to start off with Janai here, I mean, right off the gate, that resume just screams National Player of the Year caliber.
Definitely. If I'm an Auburn fan, I'm feeling confident right now that he's going to end up being the Naismith Player of the Year because, I mean, this is a guy that's literally dominated all season. He's dealt with injuries in a couple games where he had to be out for a little bit. Came back and has looked like the same player he was to start the year off. So, yeah, I'm definitely ecstatic right now if I'm an Auburn fan. And I mean, he's been a huge key in this team all season long. Like they're number one in the country for a reason right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's been a key for them for the last 2 years now. He
Yeah.
played great last season as well. It was really a surprise. Well, not really a surprise. I think Auburn fans felt that he was coming back in the offseason, but obviously they were super pumped about that. I don't know if anybody thought he would be this good, though. I mean,
No.
the way that he's played, it's one of the more dominant player of the year runs we've seen in recent memory, and we've had a lot of good ones with Zach Edey and Oscar Sheboy, most recently Luka Garza as well, if you go back a little bit further. And that also alludes to something that I think is actually pretty key in this race, Blake. The age factor for Janai, I mean, it's no doubt kind of a controversial point in this whole Wooden Award debate, who's going to come away with it and who's not. But I will note that the last four winners of this award have all been over the age of 20. Like I mentioned, Edie in
Mm-hmm.
his back-to-back seasons, he was 20 and 21. Sheboy at Kentucky when he won, he was 22, and then Luka Garza was also 22 when he won his at Iowa. So I definitely think that age may be playing a factor into what ultimately happens here. I don't know if you agree with me or not, and that's maybe part of the reason why I would almost lean towards him today, just because he's got the experience under his belt, and then you see what he's doing and what's obviously a really star-studded conference as well.
I agree. I mean, the last time we did see a freshman win the National Player of the Year was 2019, and it just so happened to be another Duke freshman, with that being Zion Williamson. This is a guy that plays the same position as Cooper. So, I mean, it's not a home run like type of swing for him to be able to win this. But I mean, just with the trend we've seen recently, with like upperclassmen winning this award. You can even go back to 2020. Obi Toppin, he wasn't a freshman. He won there at Dayton. So, I mean, this has just been a trend recently. There really hasn't been many freshmen, and I feel like in recent years, Buddy Hield, I don't recall him being a freshman winning that, was he?
No, I don't think that he was. I'll double check on that, but I don't believe so.
Because you go all the way back to like I think 2012 is the last time I can like definitely say was a freshman winning, besides Zion winning the National Player of the Year. So it's just really a big trend. I feel like in the college basketball world that they award these upperclassmen for staying longer, and like if they're producing at a high rate like Janai has, then I definitely could see that being the route they take this year.
Yeah, Buddy was a senior when he won the award. I
I
just
thought
looked
he
that
was
up.
upperclassman.
Yeah, he was. And I almost think that the age thing, it's not necessarily like I think some people have said it's almost unfair to Cooper that the
Hmm.
voters kind of tend to value experience, but I think really the trend of seeing all these older winners as of lately just mainly stems from the fact that the freshman classes of the last couple of years really haven't been as elite,
Yeah,
because Zion, when he was in college basketball, I mean, you could see that he had it. Like he was going to be, well, we thought he was going to be generational. He really hasn't lived up to the billing yet in the NBA, but college wise, he had one of the best freshman years ever. But
hmm,
really, since then, I mean, it's just hard to find a freshman that truly stood out across these last couple of seasons. And that's a lot to do with the emergence of the transfer portal. I mean, the COVID years as well, giving guys an extra year. It just seems like the culture of college basketball really shifted more towards experience rather than youth. But I mean, when it comes to youth, Cooper, he's the cream of the crop. I mean, this guy, without a doubt, in my opinion, is the number one pick in the draft when it comes time in June. And you look at his stats, they're not too far off from Johni. He's averaging 19.5 points per game, which comes out to 30th in the country. Around almost 8 rebounds a game, 7.7, 4 assists per game, 48.6% from the field, and averaging about a block a game with 2.4 turnovers a game. So he does kind of have a little bit more of a turnover rate overall, but he's also 61.4% at the rim. And when Johni and Cooper went head to head, Blake, back in December, granted that was a long time ago, and these teams have obviously evolved a lot, he did get the better of Johni in that matchup. He came out on top, had 22, 11, 4 assists, and 3 steals. That was a great night for him. 2 blocks as well. So we've seen him play head to head, and I think Cooper, he kind of won that matchup the first time around, and who knows, maybe in March we'll see it again. But we can't do this video without giving our flowers to Cooper while we're at it, because this kid's generational.
Cooper Flagg, without a doubt, is the number one pick in next year's draft. Anybody doubting that needs to reevaluate themselves as a person and their love of the game, because this guy, like he's generational. Like he just does everything well. My only biggest like pet peeve with his game is just his ball control right now. He tends to like be loose with his handles. He doesn't really have a tight handle, and that's been a big issue this season, and really has been a cause for the high turnover rate this season for him. But I mean, like you said, with the stats per game this year, I mean, he's literally averaging over one steal or averaging over three stocks this season, which is steals and blocks. So this is he's a great player. I mean, he could be better than Zion, but like before it's all said and done as a freshman in college, because like what he's put together this season is just unbelievable. This Duke team as well. I mean, it might be crazy to say they're better than the Zion like 2018 team, 2019 team, but I don't think it's super far fetched at this rate with just how dominant they've been top to bottom, racking up that win against Auburn. I mean, unbelievable. Even though it was at Cameron Indoor, it's still an unbelievable win with how much better Auburn's been on the road this year.
And I think we could very well see that rematch when it comes down to it, because if I had to bet on two teams that are going to make it to the national championship right now, I'm putting all my stock into Auburn and Duke. And I mean, with how random the tournament is, we know that's subject to change. But the only thing that I think right now, when you look at Cooper Flagg compared to Johni Broome, I mean, the stats really are there. Like he meets the mark with Johni. They're
Mm-hmm.
not super far off. Really, the only thing that you can point to is the rebound differential there. Johni obviously has the edge where he's kind of more paint oriented. But then you also have to factor in, Johni is playing in a league that is absolutely loaded. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about an SEC that could easily see 10 plus teams find their way into the dance, whereas in the ACC, that's not really the case. I think we're going to see probably 3 teams get in over there. And I
If
believe,
that, if
yeah,
that.
if that. Now, Clemson's ranked right now in the top
Yeah.
25, but when
Oh,
they
I forgot Clemson, Louisville, Duke. Yeah,
yeah,
they're locks of this, right? But I mean,
yeah, Clemson was ranked when Cooper played against them and they lost that game, or they weren't ranked, excuse me, when Cooper played and they lost that game. So if you look back on the schedule, they went like a whole stretch. That game against Auburn was the last ranked game they've played that was like at the time of the matchup, ranked on ranked opponent. That's what it was.
yeah.
And I think if Johni ends up taking away this award, a big talking point, in my opinion at least, is going to be the fact of strength of schedule. I don't know if you
Hmm.
agree with me on that. I also don't know if that's necessarily fair to judge Cooper against because, I mean, Cooper has to go out there and play the teams that he's playing. It's not his fault the ACC stinks, but I think that this is going to end up being a pretty big deal, and it's going to end up waging a lot of Twitter warfare, so to speak, because I know the Duke fans are going to get behind their guy, and the Auburn fans are going to get behind theirs too.
Yeah, like you said, I do think the SEC, like just how much of a gauntlet it's been all season. It's definitely going to be the big reason that uh, that Janai, I think, wins this award eventually. Uh, like you said too, it's like really tough to do that to a kid that's just put on a show all season long, and something we haven't really seen in the past few years since like Zion, really freshman wise. So yeah, I do think it's kind of upsetting if you're a Duke fan or just a Cooper Flagg enthusiast, but uh, I do think that the SEC play is just kind of just like it. I don't know how to word it. It just like makes you stand out from the ACC, where the ACC has 3 teams getting in. The SEC has like 10 plus teams, like you said. You got Kentucky that Duke did play, and Cooper Flagg looked phenomenal. Besides like the final 2 minute stretch there, uh, this isn't an SEC team, but Cooper Flagg had a really good performance against Kansas. He dominated against Louisville. So like ACC wise, Cooper Flagg has done his thing. SEC wise, Johni Broome has just ran through that competition, and Auburn's done this as well in the toughest conference in probably college basketball history. Johni Broome has been the headline of this conference, and I really do think him playing in this conference is going to set him apart from Cooper Flagg playing in a weak conference like the ACC.
Yeah, and I mean, you look back to Janai's performances too. Like he's been the definition of consistency all season long, and I know Cooper's been consistent as well. But like you said, with the lack of a strength of schedule, you know, it's kind of easier to sustain that. But I mean, he's going through this gauntlet of the SEC, and he's put up double figures in just about every single game, except that one against South Carolina. But that was one where he went down with an injury, so like you can't hold
Yeah.
that against him. He had 6 in that game on 24 minutes. And you look across the board, I mean, his most underwhelming game as of recently was probably back on February 4th. He played against Oklahoma, only put up 15, 5, and 6. That's considered a mild night for Janai. I mean, for some bigs, that's like one of their better games of the season. So it's just a testament to the overall just body of work that Janai has built. So I'm assuming with all this taken into account, me and you were both going with Janai in this debate for the player of the year.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
I do think Janai is going to win it just because the age, like we said, the conference, and I mean, Janai's done, I think, about as much or more as any player in college in recent years, besides maybe Zach Edey. He was pretty well decorated after he won a bunch of accolades, dominated. Same with Oscar Tshiebwe, but Johni Broome going from Morehead State to the SEC, he's dealt with that transition perfectly, and I do think he's going to end up being the guy to win the Naismith Award this year.
I will say before we close out this debate, though, when it comes to long-term potential and what we see in the future, Cooper Flagg is like the slam dunk runaway choice, though. Like, I
Yeah.
no disrespect to Janai, I definitely think he's going to be able to find a role in the NBA. There's going to be a team that takes him just because of the player he's been in college. But when it comes to just that overall it factor, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just, you know, athleticism, scoring, playmaking, Cooper has all of that when you look for it, and that's why basically every NBA GM is considering him the number one pick right now in the prized possession in this draft. I guess, Blake, before we close all this out, if you're Cooper, what's the thing you got to do down the stretch here to just solidify that status as the top dog in the draft? I think it's as simple as just working on ball control, because at times he can get a little bit out of control with it. You see sometimes he'll be slipping around, like against Clemson and against Kentucky. He had some turnovers down the stretch. Some of that just happens. I mean, you're going to fall when you're competing at such a high level, and things like that will be out of your control. But is it really just as simple for him as getting a little bit lower of a turnover ratio there? Because when it comes to everything else, I think that he's just solid across the board, and there's nothing not to like.
I don't even think there's anything to knock him about. I guess you can about the turnover ratio, but he's already solidified himself as the number one guy. Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, Jacku from Illinois. Those guys have put together really good freshman seasons, but they don't really hold a moth to a flame to what Cooper's been able to put together. I mean, Duke is the number 2 or 3 team in the nation right now. I don't remember.
Number 2.
Number 2, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got Rutgers, those 2 freshmen. I mean, what have they done? Taken Rutgers to the bottom of the conference. It's hard to knock those guys, really. I'm not saying that's a big reason why Cooper stands out, but I mean, then again, Cooper is the head guy for that Duke team. John Shire gave him the keys. I mean, he's look what he's done so far. Like, he's actually dominated. Even against Kentucky, first game of the season, he put on a show. I think he was like 7 to 18 from the field. I mean, shooting wise, that doesn't look super pretty. But I mean, what the guy was doing in his first big game of his collegiate career, and like his first big steps towards the league, he just put on a show on both ends of the floor. Yeah, you could talk about the last couple minutes where he had a turnover or 2, but that's just not fair to do, because I mean, this kid, he's generational, and I stamp that. And also, I do think that Cooper's floor is higher than Johni's ceiling in the NBA. I will say that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's really nothing to knock Cooper for. I mean, I'm just looking at something to nitpick here. Turnovers is the only thing that really stands out. And I got to make a quick message. If you're out there on a social media platform seriously saying that Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper needs to go ahead of this guy in the NBA draft, just stop. There's no reason. We're just creating headlines to create headlines at this point. Cooper is going to be the number 1 pick. He's well earned it. That's no disrespect to Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, because they're probably going to be drafted 2 and 3 in some order, and they definitely deserve it because those guys got game too. But that's a whole subject for a different day. When it comes to Johni versus Cooper, in terms of a college basketball award, it looks like this is head Johni's way. That's the way that we would go with it. But Cooper, it can't be discredited the job that he's doing at such a young age, looking this good. You can hit on the strength of schedule all you want, but at the same time, he's still going out there against some grown dudes and dominating them, even if they aren't the best competition. So that isn't even a slight to Cooper. Johni has just had such an outstanding season and such a tough conference. It's going to be hard to go against them, but we'll see. Maybe the voters will disagree with us.